Hello, everybody, and thank you so much for joining us today. We have a new kind of webinar. Today, the topic is Ask Us Anything. Now, typically, if you've joined us in the past on any Office Tools free training Thursday webinars, we typically have a very specific subject. One week we might be talking about projects and workflow, and the next week we'll be talking about billing. This particular webinar is really about whatever it is you want to talk about. Now, when registering for this, there was an opportunity to send some questions to webinars@abacusnext.com, and I do have those questions here in front of me, and we'll obviously address those. I've received some other questions directly, so I'm going to talk about those things also. And there is a questions area and a chat box area in your GoToWebinar panel. So as we're going through the webinar, which will be about 20 minutes, half an hour or so, if things pop up or you have specific questions, please feel free to type those in. I will not be turning on the microphones just due to the nature of audio and some of the technical problems. We don't have the time to really fiddle around with that. But if you do have questions, please put those in. I do have some pre-prepared questions based on input that we've received from our registrants. So again, I want to thank everybody so much for joining us for this really kind of special webinar where we can dive into Office Tools in whatever direction people are looking for, talk about things that we may not typically cover in our other kind of pre-canned webinars. So I'm really excited. My name is Philip Ferris. I'm the Director of Education for Abacus Next, and I'm also the Solutions Architect for Office Tools. I do have a special guest with me today, Nicole Flutie, who is the Project Manager here at Office Tools.
Hi guys, thanks for coming.
And she's going to fill in some blanks. There's some things I'm sure that she wants to talk about a little bit. She receives questions and speaks with users often also. So I think having the both of us here, we should be able to cover all of our bases. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and jump right in. Let's not fiddle around too much with, slides and whatnot. We're really going to dive right in. So with the questions that come through, they do jump around in a lot of different directions. Every office is a snowflake, as I say sometimes, and everybody has different needs. So I've taken the questions and I'm going to try to put them in a format that is as general as I can. And what I mean by that is some questions are so specific that they just might not be applicable to anybody other than that one particular firm. So I've taken the idea of those questions, and we're going to go ahead and discuss those again while answering the original idea of the question a little bit more generalized so that everybody can benefit from it.
Exactly.
Okay, so one question I've received, and this is something that's not uncommon when I'm doing trainings, is recurring billing. In Office Tools, we do billing, obviously, and you can track your time, you can create invoices and things of that sort. But what about those monthly clients or those quarterly clients where we want to generate bills, and based on our engagement or our deal with our clients, we know how much we're going to charge them. We know the details. We just need to have an automation behind that in order to get those invoices out. Well, Office Tools does provide that tool, that function. So it's very easy to set up. You do have to kind of go through some motions, but once you're done with that, it's relatively automated. So here's that process for anybody that may not be aware that Office Tools does support reoccurring automated invoicing. All right, so what you're going to want to do is actually navigate to the billing tab here in Office Tools, and you'll see a button under the invoices section. Move my little bar here, and it's right up here on the top, and it says reoccurring. Now, when you open this up, it doesn't really matter what client you're on. You're going to get a very general screen, and it's going to show you any reoccurring invoices or any reoccurring billing that you already actually have set up. So this being sample data, I don't have a whole lot in here, but you can see I do have two. It has the invoice dates, it has the intervals, how often they're going to appear, and the amounts, and also whether they're turned off or not. So if I wanted to create a new one, I have a new client or a new billing plan with them, it's as simple as opening up the screen and navigating to the new button down here on the bottom. This window, while organized a little differently, is basically an invoice if you really think about it. You have your client at the top, in this example, ABC Company. We can choose the style of invoice, the level of detail. We can even put in our descriptions. Now below that, there's the obvious things that make this a reoccurring invoice, something that's going to be automatically generated, where we have to set up how often we want it to be created. What is the amount of the invoices? How many of them to create? Maybe we only want to create them for a year. Okay, so this is where we can go ahead and set up all those functionalities. And it's really great for that purpose because we can, again, say, I want to bill this client $500 a month, once a month for the next 12 months. Now, if it's purely fixed fee and there's no time associated to the work or to the invoice here, then you're done at that point. You say, okay, and you effectively move on. However, if you are tracking time, what you may want to do is actually include WIP into that invoice when it creates. So what you can do is you can actually check off this box to include the following WIP as part of the amount, and then select the codes you want to use when time comes to create this invoice. And what it'll do is when the invoice gets created, it'll look at that client's WIP. If it recognizes one of the codes that you've selected, it will then relieve that WIP into the invoice. It will adjust it to the amount that you've set the invoice up for, and then do all of those things for you. Really cool tool, especially for clients where you do monthly work and then a tax return pops up. This way you can segregate the time that's spent doing the accounting and bookkeeping type work from the tax return, which may be its own project or have its own invoice and those type of things. Okay, so that's reoccurring invoicing. And again, there are some other kind of fine tuning, some options that are available, but really again, at the end of the day, that gives you the ability to create invoices and have those generated and go out to clients automatically. Okay, Nicole, the next question here, I'll send over to your way, and it's about the different ways to add documents into OfficeTools. If you don't mind, could you kind of give us a little rundown on what some of our choices are going to be? Again, this is a little bit more of a vague question. Specifically, they were wondering how they could use their, their scanners to get documents into the system, like what their best options for that might be.
Sure. We actually have a lot of options to add documents to OfficeTools, and we've done that because of the different ways offices operate, whether it's they're scan heavy, or they like to drag and drop, whatever those options may be. So really from the beginning, if you're using a scanner, you have the ability to create what's called a drop folder. And this folder is connected to OfficeTools, and OfficeTools will watch this folder. So you can put it on your network, you can put it on your desktop. And as soon as that document's scanned in, you can drag it or set the scanner to point to that folder. You've got a couple options there depending upon the type of scanner that you're using. And as soon as something lands in that folder, OfficeTools will notify you that there's a document that's waiting to be associated to a contact and some other pertinent details. If you want to associate a year to that document, rename it, associate it to a category, you've got some options there. It's that document window that pops up. So you have those options. We also have what's called a print to PDF option, which isn't quite scanning, but if you've noticed, we've got a PDF print driver here. And again, this will perform the same action. You go in to print a document, print it to PDF, and choose the OfficeTools PDF print driver, and that same window will appear and ask you the same questions. What client, what year, what project, what category. So those are a couple different options we have for you. Let's just kind of cover it maybe in more broad terms, so maybe not scanning or printing. Any document that's on your desktop or that's on your computer, you can drag that document and place it over OfficeTools, and again, it's going to give you that same prompt. What's kind of unique in OfficeTools is we've got a drag and drop area on every tab. So if you got something related to a project, instead of dragging it to the Documents tab, drag it here, because we know the information that you're looking at in that moment. We know the client that you're on. We know the type of project that you're on. We even know the year. So at that point, really, it's just drag and drop and forget. And now it's associated to that project and all those pertinent details. And again, it makes it very easy to access when you're looking for something related to this project.
Great. And there's, again, when it comes to documents, you have a lot of options. There's a lot of different ways that you can handle them, but those are some really good ways, especially when dealing with scanners and some other sources. Okay, so the next question is specifically for the client portal. I think this is a good segue talking about documents. The question was very detailed, and we just don't have the time to go into all the specifics, but I'll again give everybody kind of a real quick pass on client portal. So with OfficeTools, when you purchase OfficeTools, the client portal can be part of that. And what it does is it provides a secure online portal for your clients to access. Now, by doing that, you can then send them things through OfficeTools. The most obvious thing that you'd want to send would be a document. However, you can also upload and send invoices. They can log in and view your calendar availability. giving them the ability to actually schedule appointments based on what you've blocked off as being available. And it's fantastic in all those ways. Your staff can track time online. So the portal has a lot of tools, and again, we don't have the time to go into all of those, but here's the basic on how you would set up and use the portal on a day-to-day basis. Once you have a contact within OfficeTools and you have the portal, you just need to verify that they have an email address. Once that's done, there's a button here on the top that says portal. It's as simple as clicking the button and choosing to sync contact. Now there's emails that are generated whenever anything is done in the context of the client portal to communicate to all the parties involved, that they've been synchronized to the portal and they have a new account, or perhaps that you've uploaded a document. You will receive email notifications when they have sent you a document. And all of that links over to the Documents tab where, again, we can choose the documents that we want to send, click the portal button, and upload those files. So again, all built in, all part of OfficeTools, maintains that secure system of encrypted OfficeTools database and secure online portal, and allows those things to go back and forth. If you don't have the portal and you're interested, or if you have the portal just haven't used it a whole lot, I would highly recommend that you reach out to training@officetools.com and give us an opportunity to log in with you and walk you through those steps. So the last kind of areas here that I want to talk about, well, not the last areas, but two kind of questions that are similar enough that I'm going to combine them into one, is going to be about reviewing your workflow, especially post-tax season. And I'm going to roll into that something that comes up pretty often with projects and assignments and that kind of stuff, but also the billing component of reviewing your workflow. And this is overlooked, so I want to bring it up and go into a little bit more detail. After busy season, all the things that worked, we kind of have already forgotten about, but the things that didn't work were very obvious to us. So now's a really good time to kind of get back into OfficeTools and fine tune and tweak and polish. I have users that I've worked with for years, and it's not uncommon to get on the phone with them about this time of year and talk about what worked and what didn't, what we need to change. Perhaps they've grown in the last year or two, and now the workflow that made sense last year didn't quite make as much sense this year because of all the additional people and the additional processes that they need to track. So what you're going to want to do, if you haven't already done this, is sit down with your teams and talk about your workflow, your OfficeTools workflow. What do we need to add? What do we need to get rid of? And there's one particular area that you really want to focus on, and that's your project assignment groups. So if you navigate up to the setup menu here at the top, under projects, there's a specific area here for project assignment groups. Now, if you've been using OfficeTools for any period of time, there's a really good chance that this was already set up and probably set up by somebody else. And if that's the case, then again, this is a really good time to get everybody on the same page and review the workflow. So when you come into project assignment groups, you can see the project descriptions up here on the top. All right, so you can select the projects you want to look at, and then you'll see these two columns. The one on the right represents all of the workflow, all of the assignments for this selected project. Spend some time here, talk about it. And some best practices that you want to consider is, if there's an assignment that you always skipped, you never really use in OfficeTools, get rid of it. It's taking up space, it can be confusing. Get rid of the stuff that you're just not doing, or you realize that you don't really need to track an OfficeTools in that way. Make sure the order is correct. If you're scanning on the front end, put scan up at the top. All right, you don't want to be bouncing back and forth. OfficeTools will try to navigate you down this list in the order of items that you've created. So make sure that the order is correct. And finally, what I'd say for anybody creating or editing their assignment groups here is be very cognizant of having assignments that are not actionable. You want to be careful with having assignments that nobody can do anything about. Now you'll see here, I actually have an assignment called missing info. That one's a little grayer because it's something that we definitely want to track, and there's somebody who's responsible for collecting, missing items. But that's not necessarily an actionable thing. We're kind of at the mercy of the client, or a government agency, or a partner of some sort, or a vendor, whoever it may be, or whatever the workflow is. If it's not actionable, maybe in the project workflow, maybe that's not the best place for it. You're going to want these assignments to actually have an action associated to them. That way, when they're assigned to somebody and they show up on your activity list on the bottom, it's something that you could actually go do. I don't want 500 items on my list that I can't do anything about because I'm waiting on the client. If you find yourself in that position, you might want to create a fictitious staff member and perhaps have them hold it and just monitor their activity list. or creatively change the name. For example, I might rename missing info to contact client regarding missing info. That way when I give it to somebody or when it comes to me, the job is very clear that I need to reach out and I need to do something because I've been given an assignment.
Call to action.
Yeah, call to action, exactly. Another area where some of these things might fit if they don't go here is on the project checklist. Again, projects can have checklists and you can build those right from this screen if you like. But again, reach out to us at training@officetools.com for a little bit more details on some of those items. And this is going to bring me back again into the reviewing of your workflow, but from a billing point of view. So let's say we've gone through our projects and we're happy with our workflow. Oh, that looks good. Something else that I've seen that needs some attention this time of year is our billing detail, our billing stuff. There's two sides to that, right? There's the work codes and the billing rates. So during tax season, sometimes new codes get created. We're tracking our time and all of a sudden we realize, oh my gosh, we don't have a code for that certain thing. Let's create a new work code. And the work kind of stops there. Well, then there's problems with that because there's no rates associated and all these other things. So Nicole, one thing that I like to do and I always recommend offices do is review this stuff pretty frequently because a lot of people do add codes and don't have the rates. So I'm gonna walk everybody through kind of the process.
Yeah, those calls that, why is my work code, $0?
Yeah, exactly. Exactly.
Sometimes you just find out a little too late.
So what you want to do if you haven't already done this, just like we were talking about with the projects, go through your work codes and get rid of the stuff you don't need. If you're not sure, run a report, run a WIP report for last year, and not to look at and sort it by work code. We're not concerned about the numbers. We just want to know if it's not there because we want to compare that WIP report to this list. And if there's a bunch of codes on this list that we didn't track any time for, we probably don't need that code and we should get rid of it from this list. Okay, so review your work code list, make sure it's appropriate, get that dialed in, and then you have to, and this is critical, I can't emphasize this stuff, you have to then go back into the billing section here under billing rates and actually give those codes the correct values. Now this is per staff member. So you're going to want to go through the list, go through each staff member, select the codes that, select the codes that are appropriate and give them value. So you can see on the left, Joe Demo, who I'm logged in as. In the center column here, you can see all of my non-chargeable, non-billable codes. And then over on the far right, you can see all of my codes that actually have a rate. Perfect. All things considered, I'm done here. But if I added a new staff member or I added new codes, then there may be things in here like this conference call that I deem as billable, but it didn't make it over to the right. It doesn't have a value. So I want to make sure that I select those codes, I give them a rate, and I add them over to the right. Otherwise, as Nicole just mentioned, when time gets tracked, it's not going to have any billable time.
It might actually just funnel itself out of being billable for the client, so you're actually losing that time that could be part of an invoice and be collected on.
Absolutely. So once you do that, once we got our housekeeping kind of done there, there's one last thing that I'd ask everybody to do at this point. Up at the very, very top, there's actually an option here to update time cards. So if you did find that you needed to add some standard rates, or you had to add some codes, or you made some changes, you may want to open this tool up, and this actually gives you the ability to apply those changes retroactively. This does not affect build time. I want to keep that very, very clear. However, the changes that you make if you don't do this are not retroactive, meaning I could come in here and change the rate from $100 to $150, and that's great moving forward. That will not change my time from last week. If you have the need to retroactively make those changes, you're going to want to use this tool, choose the range that you want to go back, the people, the codes involved, and hit update, and it will run through the system and do just that, update everything to the appropriate values that you've set. Okay, so that's some housekeeping. Now there's more housekeeping to be done with your contact list. You definitely want to have a look at that. Documents, maybe. Documents can get a little messy sometimes, but that's not the worst thing. But really the project workflow and those billing details are the areas that you kind of want to focus on. All right, great. Let me just real quick check and see if there's any questions that have popped up in the area here that we can address. Not seeing anything so far. Okay, great. That's okay. I got a couple more that were sent in here. So one big area, Nicole, that I want to talk about, and you saw the email. There's a lot of details. Were in regards to budgeting.
Yeah.
So budgeting in Office Tools is it's not that it's complex, but it's a discussion. And again, like many of the details we've covered about today, we can't really go into that much detail. But I can definitely open the door for anybody who's not been using budgeting in Office Tools and clarify some things. While also doing my best to address all the questions that were submitted. So budgeting in Office Tools is actually a two-sided thing. On one side, we have staff budgets, and on the other side, we have our work budgets. Now, staff budgets are really about determining how much time we want to allocate to a particular person, and then tracking that against what they've actually done and what we've assigned to them. So as an example, Nicole may may give me a budget of 30 billable hours per week. And then assign me 20 hours worth of actual work, which leaves me with 10 hours of unassigned budget. Right?
Yeah.
We need to know those details. We need to track all those things. So that would be the staff budgets. Now, those need to be connected to work, right? Because as work gets assigned, we need to know how much time it's going to take, how much time it actually took to do, and that will then move over to the staff budget pieces. So the big area where work budgets come into play is going to be in projects. However, they're also applicable on to-dos,
Sure.
calls,
appointments. Sure.
So you'll see these all over the place. Namely, and I'll just open a call real quick. You'll see these small budget hour fields and actual hour fields, again, in various places throughout the program. But projects are really where it's at when we're talking about budgeting. We're really kind of talking about projects. So with project budgets, there's a couple things you can do. You can set up budgets globally, meaning you can say within the project definition that this project will take 4 hours to complete. I don't recommend that though in most cases because every client's a little different and it's a little hard to kind of put that budget detail on a project. But if you have the need, you can do that.
Or if you're billing by form, maybe you could figure that out.
Yeah. If you have something that's pretty standardized, then maybe that's an option. In either case, you can also come into the project and actually just put in the budget, right? And that's the project budget. So we've said that this project is 15 hours. Now, as time gets tracked, you can see this just below it, that I have 12 and a half hours actually tracked against this budget, which leaves me a little bit more than 3/4 of the way through it, about 80% or so. There's alerts tied to those budgets. There's all those details there. So we now have budgets on our work. There's a more complex version of this where you can actually come into the work list budget area here at the top and create a per assignment budget. Now this screen is actually blank now because I haven't done any of that, but I can come to the plus button, hit add budget. It will now give me a blank screen where I begin to fill in those details, such as what is the assignment, who's going to do the work, and down the bottom, how much time they have to finish it. We'll just say 3 hours. Okay, I've created a budget. But here's the difference between those two scenarios. And the first thing that I showed everybody, we simply said the project as a whole is going to take 15 hours. Then I went into the work list budget and I created a very specific assignment and put a 3-hour budget on that. So what's happened now is I've effectively changed the budget for the project back to that 3 hours for that assignment. The reason being is because you can't really have both. You can't say that I have a 10-hour or 15-hour project, but I'm only going to actually do 3 hours worth of budgeting. So you have to decide, do we want that granular per staff budget detail, or is it more as a project as a whole? Now, there's no wrong answer, just depends on kind of what your needs are. Now, that's project budgets, again, in a nutshell. The staff side is really cool. Actually, it's a lot of fun. So if you come to the staff setup here at the top, you can actually navigate directly to the budget screen. This is where you're going to want to go ahead and determine who has what budgets, right? Joe Demo has very specific budgets set up. You can see those on the graph. We can see the orange stuff, which is what's been assigned to me. The red items, which are what's actually been tracked by myself. So I've actually tracked some time, or I guess in this example, Joe. Try to make this a little bit bigger. But what we're not seeing is available. So I haven't actually set up any budgets for Joe.
Mhm.
So what I'm going to want to do is come to the edit screen here and actually begin putting in some values. Okay, so we'll just say 160 a month. We're going to make Joe work. Maybe in March we'll do 180, right?
Ooh.
Yeah, put Joe to task. So now that we have some budgets in the system, we'll be able to see those things actually show up on the screen and become available items. So as we're doing these things, we can now fiddle around with the graphs, fiddle around with the views, and see, well, we've budgeted a certain amount of time, we've assigned a certain amount of work, and Joe has actually completed a certain amount of those tasks. Because Joe might be overworked and Sally may not have enough on her desk.
Mhm.
And as we create our project budgets and our task budgets and our time gets tracked against those, all of that information comes back, updates these screens, and we can export, we can print, we can go to reports and view these details in various ways. Which brings me over to the reporting area where all of this is accessible. So if I navigate to reports, there's two that I'm going to point out in this context. One of them is going to be under the projects, actually both of them are going to be under the projects reports. So we're going to go to reports, we're going to go project reports, and the first one is aptly named budget. So as far as what projects we have, how much time we've allocated to them, what we've actually tracked, the differences between all those things, this is going to be the report that's going to help you find those details. And it has all the appropriate filters and sorts and options on it. Now there's another version of this which is more about the workflow, not so much the budgets, but they can kind of go hand in hand, and that's the current status. This is going to kind of tell you where everything's at, who's working on it, how long have they had it. You can narrow it down by project. So you might want to know who's working on all the individual returns by the end of March and what's a high priority item that we need to focus on. So these are some really good reports that kind of tie into the budgeting and workflow part of projects and staff budgets. And again, as I'd already mentioned, if you have more questions, please let us know. Okay, so with the couple minutes that we have left here, I'm gonna hand it over to Nicole, because Nicole, as the product manager, she works on a lot of the not just behind the scenes stuff with OfficeTools, but a lot of the future stuff with OfficeTools.
Mm-hmm.
So is there anything coming up in the near future, Nicole, that we can all look forward to? That you want to talk about?
I think there's a few things that we can definitely cover. During tax season, we don't typically release any updates. We don't want to, disrupt the work that our clients are doing with an update. So we kind of spend that time talking about the prior year in a glance and what we can accomplish, the new things that we want to add to OfficeTools, what we've heard from our users throughout the year. So during tax season is kind of our time to build our roadmap. So what we've got going on now for the beginning part of this year is we've got an update that will be released at the end of this month. And that update's going to contain some maintenance, bug fixes, but what's really exciting about this update is our integration with APX. APX is a payments exchange, and we have gotten the ability to put that information in OfficeTools so that you can easily key in a credit card to charge a client's account. You can even add that card into OfficeTools. Again, that data isn't hosted by OfficeTools, it's hosted by APX, so it's completely secure and compliant, but it gives you that kind of automated ability to say, hey, Mr. Client, we've got this invoice that's due today. Do you want me to use the credit card we have on file? Again, this is a feature we haven't had before. They go, yeah, great. And you go ahead, charge the card. That payment is now an APX payment, and the invoice is paid, the receipt is sent out. So it really, again, covers that whole payments workflow methodology. And the integration, again, with APX provides great fees. I think it's a 3% flat fee. Which is not really something you're going to find out on the market. It's those variable rates. Again, you get into those negotiations with those merchant services on, types of cards that, you can charge and what percentage they'll be at. Amex is always a little bit higher, so again, take a look at APX. It's a great system. We're very excited to be partnered with them. So again, this will be the big rollout for APX and that functionality of charging that client from within OfficeTools.
Awesome. So everybody keep an eye out for that. We're just about to wrap up the webinar here. I want to thank everybody so much for joining us. The last thing that we want to leave you with is some information about the Abacus Maximus Users Conference. If you've been to an Office Tools conference in the past, an Accelerate conference, an Abacus Maximus conference, please go to the site, abacusmaximus.com. Here's some information about it. There's more there. You can register. We're going to have 2 days of, again, just immersion, whether it's keynotes or trainings or breakouts. We're going to talk about technology and practice management and marketing, exhibitors, all kinds of software and companies going to be represented there. Please go to the website, abacusmaximus.com, and check that out. Thank you all so much for joining us. Nicole, thank you very much for helping me out today.
Thank you for having me.
Appreciate it. And again, if anybody has any questions or need more information about what we talked about today, please visit us at training@officetools.com. I'm sorry, send us an email to training@officetools.com or visit us at abacusnext.com. Thank you all very much.
Thank you.